So, what does culture have to do with communication? Well, it turns out that culture pretty much impacts almost every area of communication. From obviously the language we speak, to how we dress and how we eat, to many more hidden norms and values that we don't really think about. In this video, we're going to talk about culture and what it is. We're going to discuss how cultures create in and out groups. We're going to discuss how we learn our culture. And finally, we're going to talk about some components of culture. So let's jump in by talking about what culture is. A culture consists of all the learned, shared symbols, language, values, and norms that distinguish one group from another. Notice that I use the word group when I talked about a culture. While a nationality can have a culture, cultures are much broader than just a nationality or an ethnic group. For example, in the United States, there's often different cultures based on age. We don't necessarily dress the same. We don't necessarily always use the same words and language. We have different shared symbols and oftentimes different values and norms. They're their own distinct culture. Many theorists refer to culture as an iceberg because although there's a lot of things that we see about culture, there's many things that we don't see. So, for example, there's certain elements of culture that when we enter a new place, we're pretty much able to see externally, such as the language, the food, the music, and the dress. However, the truth is that what we see and consider to be the culture is really just the tip of the iceberg. Much more of culture is internal. In other words, it's how we think about the world and how decisions should be made, how authority should be respected or not. Is age a good thing or bad? What creates status in our culture? How do we manage our emotions? For example, is it okay for men to cry? The list of internal or invisible elements goes on and on. The fact that so much of different cultures is not seen or invisible is what makes it hard to communicate between cultures because people don't even know that the differences exist. Therefore, it's easy for us to violate a norm or a value and be totally unaware that we're doing so. Our culture is not something we're born with, like our skin color, hair color, or the cute smile on our face. It's learned by socialization. That means that others around us teach us our culture. We call this process of learning a culture enculturation. We learn our culture from those who raised us, those who we interacted with heavily. So that could be our family, church, education, anybody that was heavily involved in bringing us up, so to speak. Because we are steeped in our own culture, we're often ethnocentric. That means that we kind of believe that our own culture is superior, sometimes without even knowing it. We tend to believe that there's one right way to do things, and our culture has the right way, and everybody else is doing it the wrong way. Ethnocentric behavior where we feel that our culture is superior, is one big barrier to communication. We need to be open to the ideas and opinions that come from other cultures. Based on ethnocentrism, you can see and probably have experienced in your own life how in-groups and out-groups in cultures get created. Basically, the in-group is the group with which the culture identifies, and the out-group is the group with which the culture does not identify. In-groups versus out-groups can often create a us versus them mentality. This mentality can lead to poor communication, discrimination, and even violence against groups. We often see this in our society with groups such as Islam and Hispanics who are targeted by various groups and organizations within our society. As I'm sure you're fully aware, these in-groups and out-groups create communication difficulties across people, but it also creates difficulties across entire societies. When it comes to culture, most of us identify most strongly with our national or ethnic culture. But beyond that, we're a member of many different co-cultures. Co-cultures are groups of people who share values, customs, and norms related to their mutual interest or characteristics other than their national or ethnic citizenship. Co-cultures can exist around almost anything. Age, political organization, gardening, fly fishing, and even sneakerheads. In fact, many of us probably identify with many different co-cultures. The truth is the more co-cultures we identify with, probably the better we understand and empathize with different people. So we're at the end of our quick video on what culture is and some of its characteristics. I hope you're beginning to see how we need to be more sensitive to the cultures around us and understand the differences in these cultures. In our next video, we'll dive more deeply into how different cultures communicate and how there's norms of behavior that impact how they communicate. So long, and as always, if you have any questions, let me know.